Hello, boys and girls. It is time for chapter 11 of Lulu and the Brontosaurus. Now, the last time we read, the Brontosaurus decided to keep Lulu as his pet instead of Lulu keeping him as her pet. So, let's see what happens next. The Brontosaurus pulled leaves off the trees and was offering them to Lulu. She grabbed them and threw them angrily away. A simple no, thank you, will do, the Brontosaurus told Lulu. And I really liked the please you used before. So, please, please, please let me go home, Lulu yelled. Your yelling is hurting my ears, said the dinosaur. But I have to admit that even if you had asked me softly and sweetly, I still would have kept you here with me. I've been lonely, and a good pet is a very good thing. For hours and hours and hours, from early morning till just past noon, Lulu kept telling the Brontosaurus he had to let her go home. And the Brontosaurus kept telling Lulu, no. He also kept assuring her that he'd do his absolute best to make her happy. He spoke in such a kind and nice and polite and patient voice that after a while, Lulu was talking, not yelling. And after a while, she was talking softly and sweetly. And pretty soon after that, she started to cry. Yes, Lulu started to cry. And it wasn't very often that Lulu cried. She'd rather screech till the light bulbs burst and all that other stuff. But right now, she didn't feel screechy. She felt teary. And so she cried and cried and cried, soaking the Brontosaurus with her tears. He patiently waited as Lulu continued soaking him and the forest floor with her tears. He patiently waited some more, and then he said, I'm sorry I'm making you cry, little pet, but I won't be changing my mind. Would you like a tissue? Lulu now understood that no matter how hard she cried and how nice this dinosaur was, he was determined to keep her as a pet. And she now understood that if she was determined not to be his pet, she would have to escape. She cried a little bit longer, but while she was crying on the outside, on the inside, she was making her getaway plan. Sniffing a watery sniff, Lulu said to the Brontosaurus, Thank you, Mr. B. I do need some tissue. If you'll just let me down to the forest floor for 1 minute, I'm sure I can find a box in my suitcase. The Brontosaurus lowered his head and his neck to the floor of the forest. Lulu slid off, stood up, and smiled a small smile. She walked to her suitcase, opened it, poked around for a while, and found, are you surprised, a box of tissues. But instead of taking the tissues out, she put her sleeping bag in, snapped her suitcase shut, and started running. The Brontosaurus stood still and stiff, as if he was glued to the ground. But Lulu had darted off into the path, into the heart of the forest, into a part of the forest where the trees grew so close together that a creature as huge as the Brontosaurus couldn't fit. She zigged and she zagged and she zigged and she zagged through those close together trees while the Brontosaurus looked for spaces to squeeze. He was trying his hardest to catch her, as hard as a mountain sized creature can try, but she was leaving him farther and farther behind. Come back, little pet, come back. Lulu could hear him calling, first loudly, then softer, then softer. Come back, little pet. I know you'll be happy with me. Come back, little pet. His voice grew even softer, and soon she could not hear his voice anymore. Since Lulu could not hear his voice anymore, she stopped running and started walking. She tromped through the forest in silence, heading home. But she wasn't swinging her suitcase and she wasn't singing her song. And although she very much wanted to see her mom and dad again and very much wanted to be a pet, she felt kind of bad for the Brontosaurus. And so do I, because even though I'm the person writing this story, I don't like leaving him all alone, sadly calling back. Come back, little pet, come back. And that is the end of this chapter. I want you to predict what is going to happen next in the next chapter. What do you think?